Oh, the rain poured down relentlessly on that mountain crash site, can you imagine? Mud was everywhere, slippery and dangerous, turning the whole scene into a nightmare. The small paramedic with long brown hair knelt beside her patient, pressing hard against the bleeding wound, her determination unbreakable. A traffic officer whispered, "She can't hold out 6 hours at a scene like this. That's self-destruction." But she never looked up, just kept applying pressure, refusing to give in. When dawn finally broke, a ranger walked over, stared at her in shock, and exclaimed, She's the one who trained me in Fallujah." Claire Reno, 34 years old, of French-American heritage, with long brown hair and a slender build, was the paramedic who had just transferred to Ridgetop Town. On her very first day working at the EMS station, her colleagues whispered among themselves, did she really belong here? "She looks more like a yoga instructor than a field paramedic," they murmured. Claire just smiled, never argued back, letting her quiet strength speak for itself. During a minor car accident, while everyone focused on loading the patient into the ambulance, Claire quietly walked away to collect personal items that had fallen into the ditch, planning to return them to the victim's family. Such a thoughtful gesture. An ambulance driver asked, "What are you doing? That stuff doesn't change the rescue outcome." Claire simply replied, "It changes the memories they take home. Don't you see how important that is?" During physical training, Claire often fell behind the group, but she never gave up. Oh, her perseverance was inspiring. She would push herself, breathing hard, sweat dripping down her face, but always finishing every exercise, no matter what. Her supervisor, Rick Martinez, shook his head watching her struggle with the rope climb. "Maybe desk work would suit you better, Renaud," he suggested. Claire wiped her hands on her uniform and tried the rope again. Could anyone doubt her grit? In high-pressure first aid testing, she completed every scenario slower than anyone else in the class. But her success rate remained absolutely perfect. Wow, what precision! While others rushed and made mistakes, Claire moved methodically, checking each step twice, ensuring nothing was overlooked. A fellow trainee, Jake Morrison, rolled his eyes. "Speed matters in real emergencies, you know. So does keeping people alive," Claire answered quietly, her words cutting through the doubt. During lunch breaks, while others complained about difficult patients or boring calls, Claire sat alone, often reading medical journals or practicing knot techniques with spare bandages, always preparing, always focused. One afternoon, veteran paramedic Sarah Chen sat down across from her. "You don't have to prove anything to us, you know. We're all on the same team," Sarah said kindly. Claire looked up from her medical book. "I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm trying to be ready." "Ready for what?" Sarah pressed. Claire was quiet for a moment, then said, "For when someone needs me to be ready. Can you imagine the difference that makes?" The other paramedics didn't understand her intensity. Why was she so driven? During routine calls, Claire would spend extra time with elderly patients, making sure they understood their medications, easing their worries. She would carefully explain procedures to frightened children, using simple words and gentle touches. How heartwarming. "You're slowing us down," Jake complained after a particularly thorough house call. "We're not racing anyone," Claire replied, cleaning her equipment with unusual precision, her care evident in every motion. Her methodical approach frustrated the team. Didn't they see the value? Where they saw inefficiency, Claire saw thoroughness. Where they saw unnecessary caution, she saw life-saving preparation. Oh, the wisdom in that. During equipment checks, Claire would inspect every piece twice, test backup systems, and organize supplies in precise order. Her ambulance was always perfectly stocked, impeccable. Nobody's that careful. "Unless they've seen what happens when you're not," Sarah observed to Rick one day, her voice tinged with curiosity. "Maybe she's just anxious," Rick shrugged dismissively. But there were moments when Claire's unusual calm showed through. Astonishing, really. During a multi-car pileup on Highway 12, When everyone was shouting orders and chaos erupted, Claire moved through the scene like she was following a map only she could see. She triaged patients quickly, directed traffic around the wreckage, and coordinated with fire rescue without raising her voice once. How did she stay so composed? When the scene cleared, she was the only one not exhausted. "Where did that come from?" Sarah asked, genuinely impressed, truly amazed. Claire just cleaned blood off her gloves and said, "Experience," her tone humble yet profound. In the pocket of Claire's rescue jacket, she always carried a worn piece of cloth bandage, hand-embroidered with the words, "Breathe steady." A gift from an old battlefield teammate, such a touching reminder. One stormy evening, dispatch received the call. Semi-truck accident, multiple casualties. Location, 15 kilometers from the station, disaster striking hard. When the team arrived, they found the truck overturned in a ravine. 3 people trapped inside, 1 victim with severe trauma. Losing blood rapidly, heartbreaking. The rain hammered down relentlessly. Lightning flashed across the dark sky, making the rescue operation even more dangerous. Could it get any worse? Traffic Police Officer Dan Crawford surveyed the scene and shook his head. "This storm's gonna last all night. We need to wait for additional backup units." Claire immediately disagreed, kneeling beside the most critically injured victim, her resolve unshakable. "If we wait, this patient will lose more than 2 liters of blood. He'll be dead before help arrives." Her colleague, Jake Morrison, crossed his arms. "What do you plan to do? Stay out here for 6 hours in this rain? You'll get hypothermia and become a liability yourself," he challenged. Claire didn't answer. She was already working, rigging a makeshift rain shelter using a tarp and ambulance equipment. Her movements were precise, efficient, like she'd done this 100 times before, pure expertise. She stabilized the victim's neck, applied pressure bandages, and began monitoring vital signs. Every few minutes, she would check his pulse, adjust his position, and replace blood-soaked gauze. Tireless dedication. The other paramedics took turns helping, but as hours passed, they grew tired and cold. One by one, they retreated to the heated ambulances, leaving Claire alone with the patient. Unbelievable courage. "This is insane," Jake muttered to Sarah. "She's gonna kill herself trying to play hero." Sarah watched through the rain as Claire continued her work, never stopping, never wavering. "I've never seen anything like this," she admitted, awe in her voice. Around midnight, additional rescue units finally arrived. Fire department, state police, and a helicopter medical team. Relief at last. But when they approached the scene, they found something remarkable, truly extraordinary. Claire had not only kept the patient alive, she had improved his condition. Miraculous. She'd performed CPR twice, administered IV fluids using equipment from multiple ambulances, and maintained his body temperature using emergency warming blankets, all in that storm. The flight medic, a veteran with 20 years' experience, was stunned. "How long has she been working on him?" 4 hours straight, Dan Crawford answered, his voice filled with newfound respect. "In this weather? That's not normal." As they prepared to airlift the patient, a National Guard ranger named Michael Graves approached to help with the evacuation. He was tall, muscular, with short cropped hair, and the bearing of a career soldier, imposing. But when he got close enough to see Claire's face clearly in the floodlights, he stopped dead in his tracks. His eyes widened, his mouth fell open. "No way. No fucking way." Claire looked up from her patient for the first time in hours. Their eyes met. Recognition flashed between them like lightning electric. "SFC Reno." Michael's voice was barely a whisper. "Sergeant First Class Claire Renaud, the medic who trained our unit in Fallujah back in 2006. Every person within earshot turned to stare. The paramedics, the police officers, the firefighters, all of them looking back and forth between Claire and the ranger. Shocked silence. Claire's face remained calm, but her hands trembled slightly as she secured the last bandage, emotions bubbling under the surface. Hello, Michael. You made it home. Made it home? I made it home because of you. You're the one who taught us battlefield medicine. You're the reason half our unit survived that deployment. How could I ever forget? Jake Morrison's jaw dropped. Wait, what? Claire, you were in the military? Michael Graves looked around. At the assembled rescue workers, then back at Claire. Military? She wasn't just military. She was Special Forces medical. She saved more lives in 6 months than most people save in a lifetime. Incredible. Sarah Chen finally understood why Claire moved differently under pressure, why she never panicked, why she could work for hours without tiring. Everything clicked. That's why you could stay out here all night, Sarah said softly. This isn't your first time working in impossible conditions. Claire stood up slowly, her uniform soaked with rain and blood, exhausted yet resolute. Different battlefield, same job, she said quietly, her voice steady amid the storm. Michael shook his head in amazement. Do you people have any idea who you've been working with? This woman crawled into a burning Bradley vehicle to pull out 3 wounded soldiers, risking everything. She performed surgery in a bunker while mortars were falling all around us. Unimaginable bravery. The helicopter crew was getting impatient, but nobody moved. They were all transfixed by this revelation. How could they not be? She taught us how to stop arterial bleeding with bootlaces, how to perform emergency surgery with mess kit utensils, how to keep someone alive. When you have nothing but your hands and your training, life-changing skills. Claire picked up her medical bag and started walking toward the ambulance. The patient needs to get to the hospital, she said, deflecting attention back to the work, always humble. But Michael wasn't finished. You just disappeared after discharge. Nobody knew where you went. We looked for you. Where did you go? Claire paused at the ambulance door. I went where I could keep saving people. Claire wore a small silver bracelet engraved with the coordinates of Fallujah, the place where she once served as battlefield medic, a silent tribute. The truth came out in pieces over the following days, piece by piece, revealing her heroic past. Claire Renaud had been Sergeant First Class in an elite Special Forces medical unit deployed to Fallujah during the most brutal period of the Iraq War. Can you fathom the intensity? She wasn't just a medic who saved fellow soldiers. She was the medic who trained new recruits how to perform life-saving procedures under combat conditions, shaping heroes. Michael Graves couldn't stop talking about her once the floodgates opened. Oh, the passion in his words was unstoppable. Most people don't understand what Fallujah was like in 2006. He told the assembled EMS crew during their next shift briefing, his eyes blazing with memories. We were taking casualties daily, roadside bombs, sniper fire, mortar attacks. Can you even picture that chaos? And in the middle of all that hell, there was SFC Renaud, teaching 9-year-old kids how to save their buddies' lives, heroic beyond belief. He paced around the break room, his voice growing more intense, building like a storm. She developed training protocols that are still used today. Quick clotting techniques for massive hemorrhage, emergency airway procedures using minimal equipment, triage systems for mass casualty events, innovations that saved countless lives. Sarah Chen listened, mesmerized. How could she not be captivated? But why didn't she ever mention any of this? Michael laughed bitterly, a sound laced with frustration and admiration. Because that's who she is. Claire never talked about herself. Even back then, while other soldiers would brag about their kills or their medals, she just focused on the next patient, the next training session, the next life to save. Pure selflessness. He pulled out his phone and showed them a photo from Iraq, a group of young soldiers in desert camouflage posing with their weapons raw and real. In the center, barely visible, was a small woman with brown hair pulled back under a helmet, unassuming yet powerful. That's her. Barely 5 feet tall, maybe 110 pounds. But she was the toughest person in our entire battalion. Unbelievable strength in such a petite frame. Jake Morrison studied the photo closely. She looked so young. She was 28 then, already a combat veteran with 2 previous deployments, Afghanistan and Iraq, back when most people couldn't even pronounce Fallujah correctly. Astonishing, right? Michael's expression grew darker, shadowed by the weight of the past. I'll never forget the day she saved my life. How could I? We were on patrol, moving through a residential sector known for heavy insurgent activity. Our vehicle hit an improvised explosive device. Boom, everything changed in an instant. He sat down heavily, the memory clearly still painful, his face etched with emotion. The blast flipped our Humvee completely over. I was trapped underneath, bleeding internally, probably had about 10 minutes before I would have bled out. Completely terrifying. The room was silent except for the hum of the coffee machine, tension thick in the air. Claire crawled under that wreckage while small arms fire was still coming in from 3 directions, braving bullets for a comrade. She couldn't see, could barely move, but she managed to start an IV line and get pressure on my abdominal wound. Miraculous under fire. His voice broke slightly, raw with gratitude. Then the vehicle started smoking. Everyone else was screaming at her to get out, that it was going to explode. Get out now. But she stayed with me. She stayed until other medics could get me clear, selfless heroism. Claire walked into the break room just as Michael finished speaking. The room fell silent, pin drop quiet. She poured herself coffee like nothing had happened, calm as ever. Michael tends to exaggerate, she said quietly, downplaying it all. Exaggerate? Michael stood up, his voice rising with indignation. You stayed under a burning vehicle for 45 minutes. The explosion happened 3 minutes after we got you out. Facts don't lie. Claire sipped her coffee serenely. You would have done the same thing for me. That's not the point. The point is that you risked your life without hesitation, and you never expected credit for it, just like you did the other night in the rain. Inspiring. Over the next few days, more details emerged layer by layer, unveiling her extraordinary past. Claire had served 3 combat tours, grueling ones. She'd been recommended for the Silver Star twice, though she'd turned down both nominations, humble to the core. She'd trained over 200 soldiers in advanced battlefield medicine, shaping saviors. But the most stunning revelation came when Rick Martinez did some research, eye-opening. Claire, he called her into his office. I need to ask you something important. She sat down across from his desk, attentive. The Ridgetop Memorial Hospital has been trying to hire a trauma surgery coordinator for 2 years. The position requires military medical experience and advanced battlefield trauma training. The salary is twice what we pay paramedics. Lucrative. Claire waited patiently. Did you know about this position when you applied to work here? Yes. Why didn't you apply for it? Claire was quiet for a long moment, thoughtful. Because trauma coordinators manage other people's emergencies. Paramedics respond to them directly. I prefer being where the actual work happens, hands-on. Rick shook his head in disbelief. You could be running the entire emergency department. You could be training doctors instead of being questioned by them. Think of the influence. I don't want to train doctors, Claire replied firmly. I want to save patients directly, where it counts most. But word was spreading throughout the local medical community like wildfire. The hospital's chief of surgery, Dr. Elizabeth Warren, personally came to the EMS station to meet Claire's prestigious visit. Miss Reno, I understand you have extensive trauma experience. Some experience, yes. Claire understated. Dr. Warren pulled out a file confidently. I've spoken with several of your former commanding officers. According to their reports, you pioneered several emergency procedures that are now standard protocol in military hospitals worldwide. Groundbreaking. Claire looked uncomfortable, shifting slightly. I just did my job. Your job included developing new methods for treating traumatic brain injury in field conditions. Your techniques reduced mortality rates by 37% in your sector, life-changing impact. The other paramedics listened in amazement, jaws dropping. Dr. Warren continued eagerly. You also established the first mobile surgical unit for forward operating bases. You trained medics who went on to save thousands of lives. Legacy builder. Other people did the actual saving. No, Miss Reno, you gave them the tools to save. That's different, and arguably more important, empowering. Jake Morrison finally understood why Claire had seemed so different from day one revelation. All this time, we thought you were inexperienced, but you're probably more qualified than anyone else here. Mind-blowing. Claire finished her coffee and stood up resolutely. Experience doesn't matter if you're not willing to use it. Every call we respond to, someone's life depends on us doing our job correctly. Crucial. That's true whether it's a battlefield in Iraq or a car accident in Ridgetop. Michael Graves nodded emphatically. That's what made her such an incredible instructor. She never treated any situation as routine or unimportant. Every training exercise, every patient, every medical procedure got her complete attention dedicated. Dr. Warren made one final attempt, persuasive. The trauma coordinator position would allow you to impact hundreds of lives instead of one patient at a time. Broader reach. Claire headed toward the door determinedly. I've spent enough time managing systems. I want to keep using my hands. Tactile, real. CTA type. I owe a debt if you've ever been saved by someone who never asked for credit. Profound. Claire continued her work as if nothing had changed. Steadfast. She arrived at 7 a.m., checked her equipment meticulously, and responded to calls with the same quiet professionalism she'd always shown. Consistent grace. But something had shifted in the dynamics of the team. Transformative. Younger paramedics began seeking her out during breaks, asking subtle questions about trauma response and pressure techniques. Eager learners. Hey, Claire. Rookie paramedic Tommy Martinez approached her during lunch yesterday, excited. You stopped that arterial bleed so fast. Could you show me that technique? Claire looked up from her medical journal. It's just direct pressure, Tommy. Nothing special. But the way you positioned your hands was different, more effective. Game changer. Claire set down her sandwich and demonstrated on Tommy's arm, showing him how to locate the exact pressure point, how to apply force without cutting off circulation. Completely patient guidance. The key is feeling for the pulse above the wound, she explained patiently. You want to compress the artery against the bone, not just press randomly on tissue. Precise. Tommy practiced the technique several times, improving. Where did you learn this? Claire's answer was simple. Experience, hard-earned. More paramedics started gathering around during these informal training sessions. Community building. Sarah Chen, Jake Morrison, even veteran supervisor Rick Martinez would listen as Claire explained advanced procedures. Attentive audience. She taught them how to recognize internal bleeding from subtle vital sign changes, how to maintain airway control when standard equipment failed, how to improvise medical devices using common materials. Practical wisdom. The most important thing you can save, Claire would say at the end of each lesson, is the will to live in the person you're treating. Inspiring mantra. Her influence spread beyond technical skills. Holistic. During a house fire call, when an elderly woman was afraid to leave her burning home, heart-wrenching fear, Claire sat on the front steps and talked with her for 20 minutes, not rushing, not pushing, just listening to the woman's concerns about her cat, her medication, her fear of hospitals. Empathetic ear. We'll make sure your cat is safe, Claire promised reassuringly. And I'll personally check that your medication gets to the hospital with you. Trust me. The woman finally agreed to evacuation relief. Jake Morrison, who had initially criticized Claire's thoroughness, found himself adopting her methods. Personal growth. He started spending extra time with pediatric patients, explaining procedures in simple terms using Claire's gentle approach. Transforming. You were right, he told Claire one evening gratefully. We're not racing anyone. The job is about more than just transport. Deeper meaning. Word of Claire's background spread quietly through the local emergency services community. Fire departments, police units. Even dispatch operators knew they had someone special working in Ridgetop. Whispers of awe. But Claire never mentioned her military service unless directly asked modest. She never corrected people who assumed she was just another small-town paramedic unassuming. During a particularly difficult multi-vehicle accident, when everyone was overwhelmed and emotions were running high intense pressure, Claire moved through the chaos with her characteristic calm anchor in the storm. She organized triage, coordinated with multiple agencies, and kept everyone focused on their job's leadership. Afterward, Fire Captain David Torres approached her admiringly. "That was exceptional work, Claire. You kept us all thinking clearly when things got chaotic." Claire replied, deflecting the praise humbly. "No, it was more than that. You have a gift for leadership under pressure, undeniable." But Claire was already walking back to her ambulance, checking supplies for the next call ever prepared. A few days later, someone spray-painted words on the side of the overpass where the mountain accident had occurred. "The person who kept you alive in the rain once kept a whole unit alive in war tribute." Claire saw the graffiti during her morning commute. She stopped her car, stared at it for a long moment, moved, then drove on to work. At the station, Sarah Chen asked if she'd seen the message curiously. "People respect what you've done, Claire, both here and overseas, well deserved." Claire poured coffee and checked the duty roster routinely. "Respect is earned, one call at a time, step by step." CTA type, "I will live kindly if you believe courage and skill should be used to save people," motivating. Claire Reno represents something we rarely recognize in our daily lives. Heroes walking among us, unnoticed and unacknowledged hidden gems. Across America, thousands of veterans have transitioned from military service into civilian careers, where their extraordinary training serves ordinary people. Emergency responders, nurses, teachers, social workers, quiet contributors. Many carry experiences and skills forged in the world's most challenging environments, battle-tested. They don't wear uniforms anymore. They don't display medals or talk about their service discreet. They simply show up day after day, applying hard-earned expertise to help their communities' selfless service. Claire's story illustrates a profound truth. The qualities that make someone exceptional in extreme circumstances, calm under pressure, methodical thinking, unwavering commitment to others, are the same qualities that make them exceptional in everyday emergencies. Timeless. 6 hours in the rain wasn't Claire's greatest challenge. It was just Tuesday routine heroism. Her military training taught her that every life has value, that giving up is never an option, and that preparation prevents tragedy. Vital lessons. These lessons translated perfectly to civilian emergency medicine, seamless. But perhaps the most important aspect of Claire's character is her humility. Endearing. She could have used her background to demand respect, higher positions, better assignments, opportunities abound. Instead, she chose to let her actions speak eloquent silence. In a world obsessed with recognition and social media validation, Claire represents a different approach. Serve without seeking credit. Help without expecting thanks. Save lives, because that's what needs doing. Refreshing. Her story reminds us that heroism isn't always visible, subtle. The person sitting next to you on the bus might have saved lives in Afghanistan. Your child's teacher might be a decorated veteran, surprising possibilities. The paramedic who responds to your emergency call might have trained soldiers in battlefield medicine, unsung. We live surrounded by quiet heroes who have dedicated their lives to protecting others, inspiring network. Some served overseas, others serve in our communities, but they share the same fundamental commitment, using their skills and courage to preserve human life. Noble. The next time you encounter someone who approaches their work with unusual dedication, who stays calm in crisis, who seems to have reserves of strength others lack, consider that you might be meeting someone whose capabilities were forged in circumstances most of us cannot imagine. Thought-provoking. Claire's 6 hours in the rain represented something larger than one rescue. It demonstrated how military values and civilian service intersect, how training designed for war can be repurposed for peace, and how the greatest heroes are often the ones who never talk about being heroes. Profound intersection. Respect the hands that save you even when you don't know their history. Honor them. Honor the people who choose service over recognition, who use their hardest-earned skills for the benefit of strangers. Admirable. Some stories shouldn't be forgotten, everlasting. If you believe in stories that touch the heart like this one, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to The Veteran Story. We tell the stories that shouldn't be forgotten. Vital. Real people are creating and telling stories, not mass-produced AI. Authentic.